Thank you very much for that question. I know it's one that might be on the mind of many of you. The diversity visa program was formulated to assist those countries whose emigration flows to America were not at a high enough level given the population of that country. And now so many Bangladeshis have in fact emigrated to America that Bangladesh has surpassed that level and therefore no longer qualifies for having the diversity visa program. So that has now ended, as the questioner rightly pointed out.
So why don't you, Ambassador, talk about the efforts we are making to increase student exchanges and other study opportunities.
Oh, Madam Secretary, you may regret having asked me to do that. It's very hard to give up this microphone with that question in the air. On the stage is my youth council. We are focused on youth, on the leaders of today and the leaders of tomorrow. And we have a wide range of programs that to facilitate youth going to America, to facilitate youth here in Bangladesh working among themselves to help build this wonderful nation. The place to find out more about all of that is to come to our American Center here in Dhaka, also the American Corners in Jeshore and Sylhet and Chittagong. And soon in mid-July, we'll be opening the Edward M. Kennedy Center in Dhanmondi area among all, close to Dhaka University and all of those private universities, reaching out to you, to the young people, to create a platform for you to work together to make the golden Bangladesh. I better stop there because I'm sure I'm getting dagger looks from my boss.
Madam Secretary, we will take one more question.
Okay.
Definitely from this side. No, which took. Okay, sure, please.
Thank you. Oh, first of all, I'd like to say you have got a very beautiful smile. Anyway, I'm Nabila Hussain. I'm a state alumni. I'm also working as a lecturer in AIUB, American International University, Bangladesh, and I'm also vice president of Bangladesh Youth Empowerment Society. So my question is, you're like one of the most, maybe the most influential woman in this world and a very influential character or figure for all the women in this world. So in your journey from a young leader to today's position, the Secretary of the United States of America, what were the advantages or disadvantages you got being a woman, or were there any even? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think that it is exciting to see the opportunities for women opening up in many places around the world, not just in my country, and here in your country. As I see more and more women taking positions of responsibility, not only in politics and government, but in academia, in the professions, in civil society, in business. That's been one of the changes that I think has helped Bangladesh, to go back to Muni's question about soft power. The empowerment of women, half the population, makes a huge difference. And certainly I have lived through that kind of experience in my own country, where more and more women were able to pursue their own dreams, to study in colleges and universities that were opening doors to them to pursue careers, professions, and make a contribution. In my own case, I have always believed that you have to get a good education, which all of you are doing, to equip you to make the best decisions for yourself. You cannot expect to be able to advance in your own chosen path if you are not prepared. So the first advantage I had is I had an excellent education. I had a very good secondary education, higher education, I went to law school, got a law degree from Yale University. So I felt that I'd gotten the education that I needed to be able to start making decisions. I think the second advantage, which really has stayed with me my entire life, is that I had a family and I had parents, both a mother and a father, who encouraged me and who made no difference in their encouragement and expectations for me, their daughter, as they did for their sons. And I just lost my mother in November, but she was somebody who understood that you have to make your own way in life, because ultimately that is how you will determine the purpose and meaning of your life. And she was a wonderful mother and gave me so much, and that, of course, made a huge difference. I think the other advantage is that I was determined, I was healthy, I had a lot of stamina, I had a thick skin, and therefore, as I went through various phases of my life and had people tell me from a relatively young age that girls didn't do that, or girls shouldn't do that, or you can't have that scholarship because that's only for men, or you can't go to that program. You know, I just kept going, and luckily a lot of those obstacles have been eliminated in my country. So the kinds of legal obstacles, institutional obstacles that used to exist no longer do. For the great part. And so young women have more choices than even I had when I was younger. So I mostly see advantages, but that doesn't mean that there aren't problems and that there aren't challenges and that there doesn't remain a double standard. Because I don't want to mislead you, there is a double standard. There's a double standard in every society, including advanced societies, you know, that I live in or that, you know, exist in Europe and elsewhere. But you can't give in to that. You can't be embittered or angered by it. You just have to keep working to overcome it. And the final thing I would say is I was advantaged because I always believed that women had every right to go as far as their hard work and their talent would take them. But they would have to prove themselves, that there was no given, there was no presumption that couldn't be rebutted. You had to demonstrate that you were capable and ready and willing to do whatever the job was. So I think that it's been mostly advantages, but it's also because I just kept moving forward and did not allow other people's expectations or other people's opposition to determine the choices in my life. And I would think that's true for both women and men, because if you're trying to chart new ground, and some of these young youth leaders, and I have on my bracelet the Volunteer for Bangladesh sign here. You're trying to create something for your country that is kind of new. You know, young people historically have had to wait their turn. That's the way it's been in the past, but that's no longer the way it is. You know, you now are able to demonstrate your own ability, make your own mark, make your contribution, but I am sure there will be people who tell you to wait. You know, wait your turn, don't go too fast, don't try to do too much. So you have to be smart about it because you want to be successful, but you also have to be strong enough not to get discouraged and deterred for doing what you believe is right to do. So I think that's you know, the best I can say to answer your question.
Yeah, Madam Secretary, you are an inspirational leader to us.
And I spend a lot of my time trying to convince people to figure out ways to work together. You know, I mean, it was in the newspapers what I said last night in both my meetings with Sheikh Hasina and Begum Zia. I said, I wish you could figure out ways to work together. You need to work together to get an election mechanism in place so that your democracy has predictability and can keep moving forward. In every place I go representing my country, I try to think of what is the best argument to make, what is the best way to present the potential of greater positive results for people if we can just figure out how to overcome and bridge our differences. Because in the modern world in which we're living, we're all interdependent. We're all interconnected. You just can't say that you're going to only deal with your own kind of person, or you're only going to meet your own kind of person, or you're only going to listen to your own kind of person. That's not the way the world is going to work. And we'll either figure out how to be more integrated, or we will disintegrate. And we will have more conflict, and we will have more problems that we won't figure out ways to solve because we won't work together. You have big problems with water, right? You've got to figure out ways to work with India and Nepal and other neighbors, and you have to make a case that it's in their interest to work with you. So you don't make agreements with people you agree with before you start. You have to figure out what are the areas of agreement that you can possibly meet together on. So I spend most of my time trying to think of, smart ways to help people overcome what is keeping them apart, keeping their people poor, keeping conflict going, giving room for violence, and all of the problems that we have, when I think the world has such an enormously positive potential for all of you. Because finally, I would say, Mooney, that the work I do is about my daughter and about the next generation and about the kind of future you deserve to have. And I said last night, it's like when Ted Kennedy came here as a young man and planted that banyan tree. Yeah. That was an act of symbolic faith in your future, and the tree has flourished. Well, that's like a metaphor. You have to be planting trees in soil that has been uprooted, sometimes polluted by all of the problems, but you have to keep doing it. And each of you who is a young leader has so much at stake in making your country what it can be in your lifetime.
Madam Secretary, you are just pressing on the young leader. Of course, we are in a excellent gathering of young leaders, but I mean in terms of smart politics. So what about the experienced leader? So who they are now, well, I'm not saying that they are creating problem. They are on the wheel. So then,
well, I mostly deal with the experienced leaders, the leaders who've been around for a long time, because those are the people I sit across the table from. Presidents, prime ministers, foreign ministers, other national leaders, but most of them are beginning to see that the world around them is changing. You cannot escape social media. Social media can get information to people that governments used to try to control and prevent you from having. Politics is utterly changed because it's not just authorized sources of information that the government approves about what is happening politically. It's bloggers, it's tweeters, it's people with an opinion. And everybody who has a cell phone can take a picture of a corrupt official demanding a bribe and post it and say, this should be a corruption-free country, and we're going to do everything we can to stop it. And they can also call out leaders who are abusing power and abusing human rights. So even experienced leaders now have to recognize that you can't keep doing politics the same old way. And there has to be an openness to new ideas, an acceptance of accountability. I mean, one of the biggest problems in developing countries, and look, it's a problem here. One of the reasons that you've not been eligible for a Millennium Challenge Compact is because of corruption and the failure to take more steps to stamp it out. So every leader has to be asked, are you in this, are you in politics and government for yourself, or are you in politics and government for the people of your country to leave them a better future? That's the question. So now it can be asked not just by journalists, but by millions of people who are connected on social media. And I think that's a promising development. A lot of governments are trying to figure out how to prevent that. You know, we do a lot of work in the State Department to break down the firewalls that authoritarian governments try to put in place to prevent their own people from getting information. You know, we're seeing it now in Syria, a brutal, violent crackdown on what started as peaceful protests by students and young people, which is now morphing into a very widespread conflict that is very dangerous. Inside Iran, you know, constant efforts by the Iranian government to keep information out so that people don't have a chance to think for themselves. And so we do spend a lot of time trying to help those people inside such countries have access to information that they can then convey. And I think every leader is going to have to deal with that.
Can we take a few more questions from the audience, please?
There are a lot of young entrepreneurs in this audience, so we want to also give them an opportunity.
Yes.
Well, thank you. This is Rizwanul Haq Masood, the student of International Relations from University of Dhaka. We have seen that there was a signing of a partnership agreement last night between United States of America and Bangladesh. And now, how much hopeful can we be of seeing a long-term strategic and stable U.S.-Bangla relations for our future generation? And what role do you expect the Bangladesh to play in a region where we have Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, and India not far from us, in fact, and geostrategically and maritime issues? Thank you.
Well, the question's a very good one, because part of the reason that I wanted to develop and then sign the partnership agreement last night is to do exactly as your question implied, to put our relationship on a stable basis, regardless of who our president is, who our Secretary of State is, who your prime minister is, who your foreign minister is. It should not be dependent upon the personal, the persons holding the positions. It should be between our two nations, between our governments and our people, year after year after year, so that we develop institutional cooperation between us. And that's the purpose of that partnership agreement. And I'm very pleased about it, because we do a lot of government-to-government talking. We do a lot of government-to-NGO talking. We do a lot of government-to-business talking. But I wanted to bring it all together under one umbrella so that we could count on it lasting year after year after year, because that's the kind of partnership we want to have. With regard to your second question, I think that Bangladesh has the opportunity to play a constructive role in trying to resolve regional problems. And I would like to see you do that going into the future. Reaching out to your neighbors. Now, it's not a short-term proposition. It can take time. But make it clear that Bangladesh wants to have a pivotal role in resolving cross-border problems. I mentioned one, water, climate change, which is obviously another, opening up economic markets. I heard last night that Bangladesh now has maybe either limited or no tariff access into the India market. I mean, that's the kind of cooperative agreements that I think are very good, not only for Bangladesh, but for the region. So I would urge that.
Can we also expect duty-free access to the U.S. market? Because that is a major concern for the RMG sector. And you mentioned RMG, and so many women are employed in this sector. So is this something that is...
Well, we're certainly looking to see what we can do. I heard quite a bit about that last night, and we want to finish a trade and investment agreement. But I'll give you an example of the kind of agreements that we want to enter into on trade and investment, because we're very close, we hope, to negotiating this, do have requirements for labor standards. Because we think if you're going to become a middle-income country, you have to have a strong base on which to build that kind of labor force. And so you want to build in labor protections. And that, to us, is a key part. And it's also part of the International Labor Organization Declaration. Because after a certain point of development, you're seeing it in China. China's having more worker unrest, more labor problems. They're finding all kinds of outside attention as to how they put together electronics or garments or whatever. So as you evolve economically, you have to begin to have a legal framework to protect labor rights. So in our agreements, we do have requirements, and sometimes those are difficult, not only for the government, but for the business sector. But we think it's the best way to set out how you're going to have the kind of economic progress that will not just exploit people, but will build a better future.
Absolutely, thank you.
Lots of questions.
We should take at least.
আমার নাম আলিয়া আক্তার, আমি জেনারেল সেক্রেটারি BJWF.
My name is Alia Akhtar. I'm the General Secretary for BGIF.
তো আমরা শ্রমিকের অধিকার নিয়ে কাজ করতে শ্রমিকের অধিকার নিয়ে কাজ করি, মানবাধিকার নিয়ে কাজ করি।
We work with workers' rights.
তো সেখানে আমাদের অনেক ধরনের বাধাবিঘ্ন হয়, পুলিশ, মাস্তান এবং কি মিথ্যে মামলা দিয়ে আমাদেরকে হয়রানি করা হয়।
And there we face all kinds of obstructions with the police, goons, thugs, and false allegations in court.
এবং কি আমাদের সংগঠনে আমাদের একজন কলিগ আমিনুল ইসলাম, সে শ্রমিকের অধিকার নিয়ে কাজ করতে যেয়ে তাকে হত্যা করা হয়, খুব নির্মমভাবে তাকে হত্যা করা হয়।
In fact, one of our leaders, Amirul Islam, was very brutally murdered.
তাহলে আমরা এদেশে শ্রমিকের অধিকার নিয়ে বা মানবাধিকার নিয়ে আমরা কিভাবে কাজ করব?
With such conditions, how can we work on the cause of workers' rights?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And well, first, let me say that I spoke out strongly to the point that there needed to be an independent investigation into the murder of Mr. Islam, because certainly his family and his colleagues deserve answers about what happened to him. So on that particular case, this is a real test for the government and for the society to make sure you don't say that anyone can have impunity. That's a key issue for the rule of law. Secondly, on your larger question, you know, the history of labor rights and labor unions in any developing society is always difficult. There are strong forces that oppose workers being organized. We had this in my own country. You go back to the 19th and the early 20th century when labor unions were just getting started. There were goons, there were thugs, there were killings, there were riots, there were terrible conditions. We passed laws at the beginning of the 20th century against child labor, against, you know, too many hours for people to work. But that took time. It took time to develop a sense of political will to address those issues. So you are beginning that, and it's a very important struggle. I think in today's world, everything is accelerated because everything is known. There are no secret issues that can't be exposed. There are exposés about, you know, factories from, you know, China to Latin America. So you are doing very important work. Do not be discouraged or intimidated, but you deserve to have the support of your government and your society. The third point I would make is that we have worked from Colombia to Cambodia with the owners of factories and other enterprises to help them understand how they can continue to make a very good profit while treating their workers right. And in fact, we have spent a lot of time trying to help owners of businesses understand how to do that. And it's worked. And we have people who are quite experts in that. You know, for many years, Colombia, the country in South America that has one of the fastest growing economies in the world right now, had hundreds of labor organizers killed. And they were killed by economic forces and political forces that didn't want to share power, didn't want to share profits, who didn't see that that was part of the obligation of democracy and society. So we have seen this happen all over the world. And we stand ready to work with factory owners and labor organizers to have a better dialogue, to understand what can work, and then to help you implement it. So I thank you for raising it, because it's a part of becoming a middle-class country. Workers deserve to have their labor respected and fairly paid for. Factory owners deserve to have what they pay for, which is an honest day's work for the wages that they pay. So there is a way to accommodate those interests. And we've seen it, and we can continue to work with you to try to achieve it.
Madam Secretary, I have a question regarding cooperation between our two countries like America and Bangladesh on power and energy sector in a changing reality of Myanmar, and after resolving our controversy with maritime boundary with Myanmar.
Yes.
So,
well, first I want to recognize that the way that you handled your maritime boundary with Burma and the way you're handling it with India is exactly the way it should be resolved. You went to the international authorities, you submitted your information, you had a favorable ruling, but you did it by a peaceful rule of law approach. So I really compliment you on doing that. And
that's smart power they use must be.
It is.
They must be used for smart power.
It's very smart, because it's now resolved, and it comes at a very good time, because as Burma is reforming economically and politically, I think that Bangladesh can be of big help to the people there. And there's also economic opportunities for your businesses in working across the border. So I think it's a win-win for your country. And I would hope that as the democratic reform effort there continues, civil society here will also get involved, because they've been under a military regime for 40 years, right? So they don't have yet the institutional experiences that you have been developing. So I hope that there'll be some outreach to try to assist them as they make progress.
Thank you.
I specifically like to know about the investment on energy and power sector.
Well, energy and power is critical, we know, to Bangladesh, because you still don't have reliable, affordable electricity across the country. And we talked last night, and as part of the partnership agreement, the government asked if we would provide technical advice about potential development of your hydropower, exploring whether you have natural gas, unconventional gas resources, including shale gas, other kinds of advice that we would be willing to offer. So we're going to send a technical team to work with you on that. What kind of renewable energy in addition to hydropower, whether there's an opportunity for geothermal, for wind, for solar greater than has been anticipated. So we stand ready to help you meet your energy needs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
I
much.
think we will have to
we have to
wrap it up. So I think
I would like to ask our honorable, respected Madam Secretary, what are you taking back with this trip? You know, you have visited China and you are going to India, and
right.
So this evening you are leaving for India. So
Yes.
from exactly what you are taking back?
Well, I'm first of all taking back just the overall impression of the dynamism and the progress that is being made here and in the region. You're right, I was in China. China obviously is continuing to grow and develop. They would be the first to tell you they still have hundreds of millions of people that they need to lift out of poverty, that they need to educate, that they need to provide health care for. So, you know, they are the most developing country, that is for sure, but they still are facing issues they have to address. I'll be going on to India. You know, India too is making progress, has hundreds of millions of people still in poverty that they have to find ways of providing income to, education, health care. So I think that the region itself, with you right strategically situated between China and India, has developed incredibly fast. But people's aspirations probably have developed faster. So there's now a greater expectation that people's economic and political needs will be met. And I personally believe that you are on the right track. You know, over the long run, people's freedoms cannot be denied. And what you've done by taking a democratic route, you know, it may be messy, because democracy is messy. It may not have top-down control over everything, but that way you also don't prevent good ideas from bubbling up. You are on the right path, but you know the problems you face. You understand that far better than I do. And what you need is national unity and a consensus toward continuing that progress. And I know that's hard. You have two very powerful political parties that alternate between one and the other, and you have a lot of challenges to the sustainment of a peaceful political path forward, but the people have to demand that. Regardless of who you vote for or what party you support, the people have to demand that everybody is trying to accomplish the same thing, which is continuing the economic development of the country, providing democratic institutionalization for the country, respecting the human rights and human dignity of every person in the country, bringing people together, developing a volunteer mentality so that people go out and help each other, because the government cannot and should not be expected to deliver everything everybody needs. That is a recipe for failure in today's world. So you are on the right track. Build up civil society and continue to support democracy and economic opportunity and market development. And I feel very positive about what I've seen and heard, and I'm particularly impressed by the young people who I have met.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
To thank Madam
Sure,
Secretary
no,
on
thank
behalf
you,
of the audience.
Thank you so much. Yes, no, we wish you all the best. No. You're such an inspirational role model, and I've read your book so many times.
Thank you. Thank you all.